Good morning, everybody. It is a cold Monday morning, whether you're listening to 98.5 WNEW Aston or on the Newman Media app. My name is Joe Tusio. I'll be your guest for next hour. And before I get into this disappointing Eagles loss that went down on Sunday against the Miami Dolphins, I want to first discuss the expectations that fans have in sports. And not just fans, but anybody that really watches sports and forms their own opinions based off of what they see. And the reason I want to bring this up is because people tend to have skewed expectations based off of one game or a preseason or a draft pick or a signing or a trade. And it's important to understand that regardless of how a team looks in preseason, or regardless of who you play, your expectations at times have to change. When the Eagles came into this season, during the preseason, the expectation was that they were going to be a playoff team. The way they looked in preseason gave fans hope that maybe this was going to be the year that Chip Kelly put together his team to be able to make a Super Bowl run. And the important thing to understand about all of this is the expectation. Going into the Green Bay Packers game in the preseason, everybody said they are Super Bowl bound. They are the team that's going to run the table this year, and Chip Kelly is going to show why him having full control is going to make this Eagles team different from the Eagles of the past with Andy Reid or whoever was the coach. And the expectations are skewed because it is preseason. When Marcus Mariota was drafted by the Titans at number 2, the expectation was that they were going to be a quick turnaround team and Mariota was going to win a lot of games for him. And it's okay. And I'm not sitting here badgering fans or anybody that has hope or optimism for their teams. But you have to, at some point, have realistic expectations. The preseason is the preseason. That's why it's called preseason. You don't game plan usually for those games. And yeah, Sam Bradford came out and looked great in preseason. That team looked unstoppable. And I'm not going to even deny. I was one of the people that I said, this team looks very good. This team looks way better than I thought they would. I didn't think a Super Bowl run, but I said this is definitely a playoff contending team. But as the season went on, my expectations changed. And this is all leading up to my main topic, especially for this week. And that going into this game against the Miami Dolphins on Sunday, a lot of fans or people had expectations that this was a throwaway game, that the Eagles were going to win 31-0, that these next 3 games, the Dolphins, the Buccaneers, and the Lions on Thanksgiving, these are just 3 easy win games. We're just going to roll right through. No problem. These teams aren't that good. We can easily beat them. Look what we've done the past couple weeks. And it's fine if you're optimistic about your team, and you should be, as any fan should be. No fan should have to sit there and say, well, we're going to lose these games. I don't really care. I know my team's not that good. I'm not saying that. But at what point do we as fans or just spectators or viewers of the sport expect or guarantee a win? At what point does that happen? Is it when you're riding a 5-game win streak going into a 1-7 team or a team that's really not that good? Or is it when it's a rivalry game, you just expect to beat the other team because it's a rival and you just want that to happen? We should never expect, especially in sports now, the NFL this year, there's not a lot of superstar teams. There's a lot of teams that are 500 or below, or maybe 1 game above. There's not a lot of superstar teams. So I think in this, especially this year, I don't think there should be any team that really expects a blowout win. And there's nothing wrong with being optimistic or hopeful for your team, because that's what a fan is all about at this point. But there's a point where you have to sit there and consider, does my team actually have a chance of blowing out this team. Because the Eagles aren't going into this Sunday's game, they're not a 7-0 team or an 8-0 team. They're not a team lighting the world on fire. The first 2 or 3 weeks, they might have been the worst team in the league, the way that their offense was playing. Their defense was playing very well, but their offense was maybe one of the worst offenses in the league. Now, these last 2 or 3 games, they've played very well. But if you're going to sit here and expect a blowout when you're 4-4 going against a 3-5 team, I just don't understand where that comes from. And the thing is that these teams, regardless if the Dolphins or the Buccaneers or the Lions are, regardless if the records aren't as good as the Eagles was, the Dolphins aren't a terrible team. When Dan Campbell took over that team, they had a 2-game win streak where they were putting up 37 to 40 points a game. Now, they weren't against superstar teams. They were the Titans and the Texans. And yes, they've lost their last two games, but they've lost against 2 of the best teams in the AFC in the Patriots and the Bills. So it's not like they were losing against these scrub teams. They are a decent team. And it showed on Sunday. Now, was it more the Eagles came down to the Dolphins level, or the Dolphins just elevated their play? And that's what I'm going to get into now. The Eagles-Dolphins game that happened on Sunday, where the Dolphins came out on top, 20-19, and it was one of those games where it was at points hard to watch, because I will admit here, I expected the Eagles to win. I did not expect them to blow out the Dolphins, but I expected a close win, a 27-21 game, maybe something like that, maybe put up 30 points on them, depending on how their offense was looking the past few weeks. And quite frankly, the Dolphins' defense at this point is struggling. They're probably bottom 10 in terms of their total defensive play right now. And especially with Cameron Wake out, and Brent Grimes was out as well, one of a top 15, top 20 cornerback in the league, it should have given the Eagles more of a chance to put up some good numbers on offense. But Sam Bradford came out again and had a very good game. He didn't put, MVP type numbers up, but going 19 for 25 for 230 yards and a touchdown with a passer rating of 118 is very good, especially considering how his wide receivers have been playing these past few weeks and with an offensive line that's struggling. So Sam Bradford was he was impressive. He wasn't perfect, but he was impressive compared to the first half of the year. And I was the one to say I'd give Sam Bradford until the bye week. And these past few weeks after the bye, he's looked a lot better. I don't know if it warrants a 5 or 6 year deal for $18 million per year, but he at least looks better than I would have expected at this point. And then unfortunately, going towards the end of the game, he went down with a concussion and also has a sprained joint in his non-throwing shoulder. So it may be 2-3 weeks, maybe longer, maybe less, depending on how severe the concussion is and how severe the shoulder sprain is. And of course, Mark Sanchez came in the game. The Sanchez, as people would tend to call him. He came in, and when he came in, he actually looked decent. He wasn't great, but for a backup, he looked, I guess, decent. His poise in the pocket was good. His initial throws were there. It wasn't anything spectacular, but going in on a short notice like that, in the first couple plays, he looked pretty good. He looked like a guy that could definitely come back and win the game for him. But as always, towards the end of the game, he committed the late turnover in crucial time, which could have helped the Eagles secure a win. And that was also a part of the play calling, but I'll get into that later during the show. The run game as well. The run game did not do good at all. I was expecting DeMarco Murray to probably get 100 to 120 yards. Matthews, I expected to get a lot of carries. Unfortunately, he got hurt as well. But the run game did not impress. for a lot of the game, it seemed like Ndamukong Suh was getting to DeMarco Murray early. And that's probably be a product of the offensive line. And Suh's been struggling the past few weeks. He really hasn't been playing like the $100+ million franchise player that they thought he was going to be. But this game, his run defense was very good. And DeMarco Murray, he had 60, 70 yards, but nothing impressive. I would have expected more. And maybe that's because of the play calling. The receivers and tight ends. This is where the show gets a little confusing because during the year, the tight ends have been the question mark. The tight ends were the position where I expected them to throw to them early and often during the year. I thought Zach Ertz and Brent Selleck would have been a big target for Sam Bradford, knowing that they don't have that true number one receiver. And in this game, they finally came out and gave the tight ends the looks that they needed. Brent Selleck had a fantastic first half. Had over 100 yards on 4 catches, over 130 yards on 4 catches. The confusing thing, though, is that during the second half, when they needed him, they didn't target him a lot, which is confusing to me, but if that's the way they run their plays, I don't know. I think he should have definitely gotten some more targets late in the game, especially when Sam Bradford goes down and Mark Sanchez needs that security blanket to throw to. Brent Selleck would have definitely been a good target for him. Zach Ertz also had a decent game. Didn't have a lot of yardage, but he showed that he can be that go-to receiving tight end that they need him to be. And the receivers were just flat out dry. Were just unimpressive in this game. Jordan Matthews came out and did nothing. Nelson Aguilar, granted, it's like his second week back, but he was not impressive at all. And what's surprising is that with Brent Grimes out, that secondary is not that good. It's decent when Brent Grimes is in, but with Brent Grimes out, it gives an opportunity for a guy like an Aguilar or a Matthews to stretch the field, to use that speed. And they did not use that in the game. And I don't know why. I think it was a perfect opportunity for Aguilar to show what he can do. This could have been his game, especially with the struggling Dolphins defense and the Eagles offense, the way it's been playing the past few weeks. This would have been a perfect chance for Sam Bradford to stretch the field, and they did not do it. And last, the offensive line. The offensive line struggled. It struggled a lot. They were getting to Bradford a lot. They were hitting him several times. One, which led to him being out of the game, and maybe for the next few weeks. Now they don't have Jason Peters in, and the offensive line is kind of shuffling still because of the injuries. But Ndamukong Suh had maybe his best game as a Miami Dolphin. And if they want to, if Sam Bradford's out for an extended period of time and they plan to have Mark Sanchez as their quarterback, they need to maybe make some adjustments on the offensive line or just change the play calling so it fits what they have on that offense. Now, going to the defensive side of the ball, the defense is interesting because they were kind of up and down during the game. The first half, or the first quarter and a half, I thought they were playing very good ball. They didn't allow 100 yards combined with the Dolphins' two backs. Their wide receivers, Jarvis Landry and Rashard Matthews, they weren't making a lot of big plays. I mean, they were giving up a few catches here and there, but they were keeping the Eagles in the game. I believe like after the first quarter, it was like 16-3. I mean, at some point, the defense was one of the main reasons why they were playing the way that they were in the first half. And granted, they kind of struggled later in the game, but there were definitely some improvements. And it was good in some spurts, but not good all the way through. They played about a good first half, but they need to play good 4 quarters if they want to win. The pass defense, much like the run defense, looked good at times. Lamar Miller and Jay Ajayi were putting some good runs in there, but they weren't doing 10 yards every single run. It was maybe one run here, one run there. And the pass defense goes the same way. Landry and Matthews, they weren't putting up huge plays every single down. Maxwell is showing signs of improvement. I don't know if it's worth the $60 million, but he's showing signs that maybe he can be at worst, a fantastic number 2, but eventually maybe be a number 1 cornerback if they get help along the secondary with him. And there were just some key players that had great games. Fletcher Cox early played very well. Michael Kendricks played very well, especially with Jordan Hicks being out. This linebacking core had to make some adjustments, and Michael Kendricks was a guy that came through early and often, came off the edge, just played the normal inside linebacker role, played very well. And one of the surprising things was Kiko Alonso did not show, at least to me, he didn't show any signs of being a number 1 superstar inside linebacker. He only played, I believe, 30 snaps in the game. I don't understand why they didn't play him more. I know he was injured, but if you want to show that this trade was actually worth making, then you need to put him out there more. And he didn't make any plays where he jumped off the screen and said, wow, that was a great play. He was just kind of there. He made maybe 1 or 2 plays, but he didn't have any superstar plays that I think Eagles fans are waiting to see. And again, Walter Thurman had another good game. Overall, the defense played good in spurts, but they didn't play a complete 4 quarters of football. And all in all, to sum up this game, to me, the play calling was the main reason why they lost this game. Mark Sanchez was driving them down the field. 1st and goal. Regardless if you're 10 or 15 yards back, why do you pass the ball? You pay all this money to a DeMarco Murray and you don't run the ball. I do not understand that. I don't care if there's a wide receiver that is wide open. You run the ball on 1st and goal, period. If the Miami Dolphins are supposedly one of the worst defenses in the league right now, you should run the ball. I do not get it, especially if a Mark Sanchez is in the game. If a Sam Bradford's in the game, okay, you can argue that he can make that play. But with a quarterback that is a backup in the league, there is no excuse for not running the ball, period. And that's the only reason to me why the Eagles lost the game. And everybody's going to say, well, Sam Bradford wasn't in the game, and that's the main reason. It does not matter. You had chances to win the game, and the play calling caused them to lose. And this is where Chip Kelly needs to make some adjustments. He needs to change something. He needs to change something, especially if Mark Sanchez is going to be in there for 2 or 3 weeks. You cannot have him throw the ball 30, 40 times. If you do that with the receivers that they have, and the offensive line that's struggling as it is, there's no way the Eagles have a chance at the playoffs if they continue to make these type of plays. I want to discuss the idea of Chip Kelly being both the GM and the head coach of the Eagles at this point. Now, when he first came in, Howie Roseman was the GM, and eventually Chip Kelly was given the keys to the kingdom, basically, and he was allowed to make the decisions of who they draft, who they sign, who they trade, because, quite frankly, he wanted to have his team. And I'm just going to go through some moves that he's done over the last 2 years or so and just weigh the pros and cons of these moves and how it ends up maybe being one-sided if he did more moves that were positive for the team or more moves that were negative for the team, and just the overall perspective of how Chip Kelly's done so far. So there have been, over the last 2 years, a lot of good moves that Chip Kelly's made. He signed Connor Barwin, a great outside linebacker for the Eagles, went to a Pro Bowl with the Eagles. He signed Walter Thurman and Malcolm Jenkins, becoming a great safety tandem in the league, maybe top 10 in the league right now at this point. He signed Nolan Carroll at a good price, a guy that is a good number 2 cornerback not quite a superstar, but a guy that can definitely start every game for him. He also signed Byron Maxwell, which is a debated topic just because of the amount of money he was signed. But you can argue that at the time, maybe they have to give him that much money because really he's the best guy on the market. He traded for Darren Sproles, who has been one of their best special teams players and can be a great weapon on offense. He signed DeMarco Murray and Ryan Matthews, who can be a great 1-2 punch at running back for him. They are guys that seem to maybe fit the Chip Kelly mold of a running back, according to most people. I personally think LaShawn McCoy would be better fit for this scheme, but if Murray Matthews fits his scheme better, then so be it. He also drafted Jordan Matthews and Jordan Hicks, both two key pieces on the offense and defense. Hicks might be their best young linebacker right now, and Jordan Matthews, quite frankly, is probably their best wide receiver at this point in the year. There have also been a lot of cons. He let Deshaun Jackson go. He let Jeremy Maclin go. He let Evan Mathis go. He re-signed Riley Cooper to a big deal for a wide receiver that can't catch well and all he really does is block. It's kind of ridiculous. He also signed Miles Austin, and there have been a lot of trades. He traded Nick Foles in a second-round pick for Sam Bradford. Now, it's only half a year, and Nick Foles, quite frankly, isn't playing so well with the Rams right now. But it wasn't Nick Foles for Sam Bradford. It was Nick Foles in a high draft pick. So if Sam Bradford continues to become injured for the Eagles, that second-round pick looks like a big deal, especially in the league now where you can get a quarterback in the second round. Derek Carr right now is looking like maybe a top 10 quarterback, and he was taken in the second round. Russell Wilson was taken in the third round. Those are two examples of how second and third round picks can make a big impact on your team, especially in the league now. He also traded Brandon Boykin for a late round pick. Granted, Brandon Boykin isn't really starting much for the Steelers, but in this scheme, maybe he's a guy that can make plays. And as I said, as a pro, the Byron Maxwell contract signing is kind of both. It's a pro in the sense that the Eagles maybe got their future number one corner for the next 5-6 years, but at the same time, they sign him to top 5 cornerback money when maybe right now he's not playing up to that potential. So it's a pro in the sense of he's the guy for him, but it's a con because of the amount of money he's getting paid. He also drafted Eric Rowe, who I haven't seen play yet. He's a second-round pick. The guy needs to play. I don't know why he's not. I mean, if he was on any other team, he probably might be getting at least a couple snaps. I'm not saying he has to start every single game, but get him at least 5 or 10 snaps. Just put him out there on some third-down plays just to see what he can do. And he was also involved in the Marcus Smith draft, where many people think that it was the GM with that draft pick. But regardless, even if it was the GM, I have there has to be at least some say, in my opinion, that Chip Kelly at least had some say in Marcus Smith being drafted. So if you look at the pros and cons, there are a lot of good pros about what Chip Kelly's done so far in his 2 years here when it comes to the moves that he's made. But there have been a lot of cons, a lot of them. And the cons maybe outweigh the pros at this point, especially on the side of the ball where Chip Kelly is known for being a guru at. He let go a lot. He let go of some great offensive talent. Deshaun Jackson maybe didn't fit the Chip Kelly mold of what he wants on and off the field. Maybe. But you let him go free. They could have at least maybe gotten a pick out of that. You know, they let Jeremy Maclin go, where that's a guy that, granted, he's not a Dez Bryant, Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, Antonio Brown type guy, but he's a guy where you don't want to sign him, but you sign Riley Cooper and Miles Austin for combined almost $7 million. If you allocate that money towards Jeremy Maclin, maybe your receiving problems aren't as big as they are now. Maybe the Eagles win more games because you now have that number one receiver that Bradford can look at. if he needs him. And one I didn't even notice, I just forgot to mention in the cons, was the LaShawn McCoy trade. LaShawn McCoy, in my opinion, fits this scheme better than DeMarco Murray does. DeMarco Murray in no way is an overrated player. I don't think he's an overrated player. Do I think he's a top 10, 15 back in the league? Yeah. Do I think he's the best back in the league? No. But I think he's a better running back in a traditional scheme where you run simple run plays like the Dallas Cowboys, which is where he came from. If you run simple I formation run plays, that's where DeMarco Murray gets his plays off better. If you run him in the shotgun read option scheme every single play, I don't know if he'll get you 100 yards every single game. I don't know if he can be that stud running back that you need. LaShawn McCoy is a guy that he's not a power guy, but he's a guy that can make you miss on plays. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He doesn't really need holes. He doesn't need to find a hole along the offensive line to run for 10 or 15 yards. He can make the best out of what's given to him. And right now, the past 2 weeks, he's doing that with the Bills. I'm not saying that the trade is sort of bad because LaShawn McCoy hasn't really done it consistently this year. But Kiko Alonso isn't looking like a superstar. So if you go back and you don't do that trade, maybe you have a different perspective on how the team can run their plays instead of relying on a big, powerful back to run these zone read, shotgun run plays that seem to not really work well with a guy like that. And this brings into question, should the Eagles have given the power to Chip Kelly? Should they have given him the keys to the kingdom? Should they have let him make his moves? Because he wants to have a Chip Kelly scheme. If you want to succeed, you got to go by Chip Kelly and his scheme. Okay, maybe that's true. But if you're the Eagles, Chip Kelly is not a guy that should maybe be given all the power. He's a guy that maybe you need to have a GM that can say, Chip, I'll let you run your offense the way you want to run it. But guess what? It's going to be under my terms. It's going to be under the players that I bring in, the players that I draft, the players that I sign, the players that I trade. Maybe that's what has to happen. There's nothing you can do about it now. So it's all in with Chip Kelly, or Chip Kelly signs with a college team. That's what it has to be now. Now, I'm not saying that Chip Kelly needed to trade it for Marcus Mariota and he needed to do all this and they needed to sign Colin Kaepernick and get rid of Bradford, because the past few weeks, Sam Bradford's been playing pretty good. Does it warrant a 7-year deal? An Aaron Rodgers type deal? No. But is it a guy that can win you 8 to 9, 10 games with a better core of offensive talent around him? Yes. I blame Sam Bradford in the beginning of the year because I said Sam Bradford is not the guy. Sam Bradford is not going to win you a playoff game. I'm not going to completely conceive and say I was 100% wrong, because I do think that there's something in Sam Bradford that just isn't there yet. Whether it's his health, whether it's his, confidence at this point, whether it's the scheme that he's playing in. Do I think he's a guy that can win you games? Yes. But he's not going to be able to do it on his own. You have to get him talent. You have to get him some better wide receivers. The offensive line has to be better. And maybe this is where Chip Kelly adjusts his play calling. And I get it. Maybe after running a certain playbook for so many years that it's hard to get away from running the plays that you were taught for many years and that you've run in college and high school and it succeeds. And I'm understanding of that. But with the players that you have now, maybe you need to change the play calling. Maybe you need to run simple plays. And maybe the tempo is another thing. Maybe they need to just slow down the game. Because when Sam Bradford went out and Mark Sanchez came in, that offense was flying. Now, maybe that's how Chip Kelly wants it to be run. Maybe it's that speed that it needs to be run at. Maybe Sam Bradford can't run it at that speed. But if you think that Sam Bradford is the go-to quarterback of the future for this team, maybe you just need to change the play calling. Maybe you need to give Sam Bradford and DeMarco Murray some simple I formation plays where Murray can just get his 3 or 4 yards, find the holes along the offensive line, and run through them. Maybe he just needs to run simple pass plays. Because right now, the wide receivers are struggling. And there's just something that needs to... It's hard to really say right now. It's hard for me to even talk about it right now because I don't know what has to happen. The defense is playing good. I'm not worried about that side of the ball. But it's just, it's hard to try to understand what this offense is trying to do now. I don't know if Chip Kelly's just trying to force stuff to make it happen. Like there are certain quarterbacks in the league that they say they try to fit the ball into a spot that you just can't because they think their arm strength is just too great that they can try to force the ball and they can't do it. Maybe Chip Kelly's just trying to force a playbook on a quarterback that can't do it. Maybe he's trying to force these plays on players that it just won't work. But at the same time, when does the talent overrule the quote-unquote culture of the team? I get it. Deshaun Jackson may not be a guy that's worth having on your team right now. Fine. I get it. Maybe Jeremy Maclin wants too much money and you can't give him the money that he wants. Fine. But how are you going to replace those guys? Deshaun Jackson at one point was a Pro Bowl receiver. Jeremy Maclin is at worst a top 10 number 2 receiver. Where are you replacing those guys? Aguilar is not going to immediately replace a Jeremy Maclin. I don't care if he was taken number 1 or number 201. He's not going to replace a Jeremy Maclin like that. It's not going to happen. And it's rare. I know that Amari Cooper and Odell Beckham and Julio, I get it. Some rookie wide receivers come out and shine. But more times than not, there are some that struggle because they have to adjust to playing from college to the NFL. It's a mixture of play calling and the decisions that Chip Kelly's made in these past 2 years that has brought us to the point that we are at now. That's what it's going to look like. If Chip Kelly stays here, maybe he needs to get a change of quarterback. Maybe he needs to sign a Colin Kaepernick. Maybe he needs to get a Kaepernick. Maybe he needs to look at an RG3. Maybe. There's no guarantees because nobody knows, nobody can predict the future of what's going to happen. But at this point, with Sam Bradford and Mark Sanchez in, if you want to make a playoff run, you might have to change your play calling. That's how it looks to me. Now, I am once again bringing back my weekly scouting report on another college player. And this week, it is on Penn State quarterback Christian Hackenberg. Yes, the once very popular number 1 recruit out of high school, future number 1 pick in the NFL draft, and most recently, the struggling junior at Penn State. And there's a lot of great things about Hackenberg. There's some things that you don't want to see because it's, quite frankly, it's difficult to kind of gauge of whether he can fix some of the mistakes that he makes in a game or whether it's just nervousness. I don't know. But he's a 6'4", 230-pound quarterback. He's a guy that plays. He can play in a lot of schemes, but he's not as good in like the scheme he's in now as a just traditional offense. Like the offense that the Cowboys run or the Giants. He doesn't really play well in these triple option Chip Kelly type of schemes. He doesn't work in a fast-paced scheme. He works in a scheme that allows him to make big throws down the field and just hand the ball off to the back. And there are a lot of pros about him. He is, when you just look at him, before you even watch tape on him, you can just look up images of him. He just has the look of an NFL superstar. Because when you look at some quarterbacks coming out, a Jared Goff, Josh Rosen, who's a freshman right now, but a couple years from now, maybe the number 1 pick. These guys are small. They got the height, but they don't really have a lot of mass to them. Christian Hackenberg is already there. He size-wise, he probably could have came out in high school straight to the NFL. He really didn't need to grow into his body. He was already built for the NFL. Same thing with his arm strength. He has a cannon for an arm. When you watch him throw the ball down the field, it seems easy to him. And that's because he's just a natural thrower of the ball. And there's a lot of things to like about the guy on and off the field. One of the things I really like about him is that he can make every throw down the field. I was going to say make every throw on the field, but there tends to be plays where he can't make those little quick passes, these little 5 or 6 yard plays. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because the ball just slips off his fingers or the player doesn't catch it, but it just seems like a lot of the time he struggles with these little quick passes to the sidelines. But down the field, he makes every NFL throw. And it's weird because he's more accurate down the field than 5 or 10 yards down. It's really weird to see when he could be like 0 for 5 in passes 0 to 10 yards, but 20 or longer, he could be like 4 for 5. It's just really weird at times to see it during the game. And another thing about him that's really good is that he is a mobile quarterback. For 6'4", 230 pounds, he is mobile in and out of the pocket. He's not a fast guy. He's not going to give you Colin Kaepernick, RG3, Mariota type of speed, but he can get you 5 or 10 yards. And he's not a guy that's going to really run any read option plays anytime soon, at least from what I could tell. One thing that I like about him more so off the field than on the field, he chose Penn State because he wanted to lead that team. Coming out of college, he probably could have gone, quite honestly, to an Alabama or a Florida, Ohio State, Georgia, LA. He could have gone to like a powerhouse school, and he didn't because he wanted to play for Penn State. And he's a leader on the field. When you see him make these plays, you can see him yell. He tries to get players motivated for the game. He's a natural-born leader on the field. But with a lot of these good things about him, there are some negative sides of his play. Like I was saying, his accuracy of these like short throws tend to be not there at times. And it's just really interesting how his accuracy down the field is great, but these short passes he just can't make. And I don't know if that's just his technique, because when you see him throw the ball, it just seems like a natural throwing motion. And it's not really hard for him to throw the ball, but it just seems like these short passes he just can't make. He can't make them, and I don't know why. Another thing is that he doesn't really run great in different schemes. He's not like a Marcus Mariota type guy where you can put him in different schemes in a read option in a traditional style offense, throw the ball 40 times, run the ball 40 times. He's a guy that just should work just in a traditional style. And that's it. I don't think he would work well in a Chip Kelly offense or the type of offense RG3 ran with the Redskins or the type of offense that Colin Kaepernick ran when Jim Harbaugh was there. I think he's a guy that just needs to be in traditional style offense, throw the ball down the field, give him the ball 25, 30 times. But he's also a quarterback that he needs to have weapons around him. If you put him on a team like the Browns or a team that just doesn't really have a lot of offensive weapons, he's probably going to struggle. But he's going to be that quarterback that, to me, regardless of how he plays on the field, he's going to be a first-round pick just because his talent is there. And why I say this is because when you look at the Alabama team, a lot of the players that come out, they're built more for a college style of play. But when they come to the NFL, some Alabama players tend to struggle. To me, I think it's the opposite for Christian Hackenberg. I think he's a guy that he can play better in the NFL than in a college type of setting. I think he's built just for the NFL. And I think regardless of what he does this year, he's going to come out in the combine, put up crazy numbers. He's going to make every throw in the combine. His stats are going to be good. To me, he's going to be a first-round pick. And I pose this question to some people who argue with me about, well, he's really not that good. James Franklin's killing his career, his future in the NFL. If Bill O'Brien is with the Texans still at the end of this year, if the Texans have the number 1 pick, would Bill O'Brien take Christian Hackenberg with the number 1 pick? Because the quarterback spot is probably their number 1 priority at this point. Hoyer is not playing good. Ryan Mount is not playing good. Would Christian Hackenberg be the answer if they had the number 1 pick? Or would you take it on a guy that has maybe more talent right now, like a Joey Bosa on the defensive line, or a Laramie Tunsil or Ronnie Stanley at the offensive line spot, or an Ezekiel Elliott at the running back spot? Or would you take Christian Hackenberg with the number 1 pick? Because quite frankly, there aren't any quarterbacks in this year's draft that are worthy of having the true number 1 pick. There's no Andrew Luck, Jameis Winston, RG3, Mariota type of guy. There's just a mix of different quarterbacks, and this is a draft where there's going to be a lot of teams that they might want to take a quarterback. And there's a guy like a Paxton Lynch out there in Memphis that has every tool to be a quarter. He has every tool. He's like 6'5", 250 pounds, can make every throw, is quick on his feet, but he plays for a smaller school. So is that going to hurt his draft stock? You also have Connor Cook, a Jared Goff, a guy who might go back to Cal for 1 more year just to really get his skills together, maybe build some mass to work well in the NFL. And then you have a Christian Hackenberg who's built for the NFL right now. My comparison for him, I would say he kind of reminds me, and in no way am I saying he's going to be this guy. To me, he kind of reminds me of a Jay Cutler type of player in a sense that he has every tool to be the best quarterback in the league, but maybe his consistency and his decision-making cost him a little bit. And he's able to be a little mobile in the pocket, but he can make every throw down the field. He has every skill. He has the X factor. He has all the potential. Is he going to hit on it? That's going to be the one question probably when he comes out in the draft. He's going to be he's going to be a first-round pick. Now, just some quick thoughts before I leave you guys. Peyton Manning, he is dealing with some plantar fasciitis in his foot, which is a nagging injury that it could keep him out maybe a week or so. The same Peyton Manning that broke Brett Favre's passing record yesterday for the most passing yards ever in the NFL. And the Saints have fired defensive coordinator, they fired their defensive coordinator, Rob Ryan, because quite frankly, their defense allowed offenses to score 30, 40 points every single week. The Giants did it. The Redskins just did it. Is this a sign that Sean Payton may be gone soon? We got to see, depending on how their team finishes the rest of the year. I know some have thought that maybe Sean Payton may be out of a job. Maybe he might take the Dolphins' job. Rob Ryan, he's let go. Is Sean Payton going to be the one to follow after that? And, of course, we got some Sixers action tonight as they play the Dallas Mavericks. Hey, maybe the Sixers get their first win of the year. Who knows? Okafor is continually playing like a rookie of the year. They're getting some decent play for some other players on the team. But as most Sixers fans know, this is the year that maybe they get all the first-round picks. Maybe it just might happen. Just maybe. And then the Flyers won over the weekend in overtime by a score of 3-2. They brought up some young guys, including rookie defenseman Shane Gostisbehere that assisted on the game-tying goal. This is important for the team because with their defensive, struggling right now, this gives the Flyers an opportunity to showcase some of the rookies that they have, and going forward, when they bring all the eventual prospects up like Ivan Provorov or Travis Sanheim or Sam Moran right now with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, this is maybe the time that the Flyers might be able to put something together in the next couple of years. Their offense seems to still be struggling, but maybe this is some signs of some bright spots in the next coming years. Those are just some of my final thoughts. I want to thank you guys for listening in to my show today. Another great one. I should be back Friday at 9 a.m. You're listening to 98.5 WNUW LP Aston.